Absolutely.
Greetings, everybody. Glad you could make
Greetings,
it
Alan.
today. Bruce.
I made it.
Bruce is dialing in from tomorrow.
Okay.
Exactly.
Alan, I am confirming I am doing the backup record. So
All right,
Bill, are you
10-4.
doing yours?
Mine's rolling as of 3 o'clock. Great.
We're better than NASA. They always had at least 2 backup systems. We've got 3.
Exactly. It's because of I'm one of them. That's why we have to have the extra 2. Ingolf, how are you, my friend? Oh, you got laryngitis.
Everything fine here in Germany.
Good, good, good. Nice photograph. What is that? A fly?
It's a fly.
Nice.
On a cheese package.
On a cheese package.
Yes.
Nasty.
The blue here is a cheese package.
Oh, wow. Nice picture. Disgusting. Very good. Well, guys, I am glad everybody has made it. I'm sure more will join. Let me see if I can let everybody in. I think everybody's been let in. Here's the deal today. We're going to spend the first hour opening the floor up to questions, not just questions of me, but questions of the other participants regarding the first 2 videos in the basic series that I started a couple of weeks ago. In the second hour, starting at 3 o'clock and running for as long as we need, first of all, I'm going to have Bill speak for just a couple of moments and introduce what's been going on with the board of advisors in getting all that set up. And then after that, we'll have as much time as we need for feedback, viewer feedback. It's your opportunity to tell me what you want, what you don't, where we're going, anything you want. It's kind of like a Q&A, except you get to make statements as well. The way I want to handle the first half is it's absolutely beginners. It's the beginners meeting. So I want you guys to take the lead. If you're following along with the videos, if you have comments or questions or input, anything that would help make this more helpful to you, then please let me know, and we'll just have it as an open discussion. There's only let me see, going to be probably a couple of dozen people at the most, so you'll be able to get a word in without any problem. And you old timers, if you hear something that you feel moved to answer, then please just chime in. I want this to be as interactive as possible. If you want to use the chat to ask a question, that's fine. Just type it in and then wave at me to go look at it. And that's about it. Does anybody have anything they want to say before we get started? All right. Well, I am going to open it up then to the beginners, and that's really anybody who's got any interest in this basic photography course that we're doing. In the first video, we dealt with the trade-offs of macro photography and the things that make macro photography different than big things photography. We talked quite a bit about exposure and about the unique problems of photographing at small scale, things like shutter speed and motion, as well as ISO and noise, all the usual trade-offs in photography. And your exercise was to reacquaint yourself with the manual mode of your camera. And that was probably the single most important part of that week, is turning off all program modes and going out and shooting pictures randomly and getting a feel again for how to set your shutter speed, your ISO, and your aperture in order to take pictures, because that is more than anything else what the rest of your macro life is going to be like. It's a manual discipline, and hopefully you took advantage of that, because yeah, it's worth it. It's worth it if you don't do that all the time. The second week, of course, was talking about cameras. And as I said in the video, or in the extended video, talking about cameras is pretty pointless these days. They're all fantastic. It doesn't matter how big the sensor is, or most of the things that we brag about are relatively unimportant. What does matter is that you're confident in it, that you have the right glass for that camera, and you know how to use it. But that doesn't mean we can't argue about what kind you've got as well. So we can do that as well. So who wants to jump in? Who's got a question or a comment about the beginners series of videos so far? Well, good. I'm going to get to go bug hunting earlier than I expected.
I have a comment.
Yes, ma'am.
I thought the two first videos were very good, and thought they really covered what an introduction needs. The first one kind of gets your attitude as to what to expect, and and the problems, and the exercise was actually very good. I've been a little bit lazy and lately, and used a program. Of course, I'm old enough that I started out not using program because there wasn't a program, but going back to setting was good, and I'm partway through the exercises. And the second video was good in that I wasn't planning on getting another model or anything, but I wanted to see what the characteristics were that you thought were important. And like I say, although I knew what the end result would be, that all the cameras are good, there were some details though that I picked up, that some things I didn't know about that will be good when I talk to other people.
What kind of camera are you using now?
Nikon D850.
Yeah, well, okay, no worries then.
Yeah, that's one reason I was attracted to your channel. So yeah.
Yeah, that's one camera that you don't have to worry about much anything except not having a mirror. You can't do anything about that. But
right. All right. Yeah. So I think I've gotten kicked off Patreon in the last week for, I don't know why, because I've seen my credit card statement, but and I'm getting charged for it. So I'll have to sort that down. But did you have an exercise for the second video?
I did, but you've already done it. Well, actually, yeah, I asked everybody to think about their current camera or the camera that they were planning on getting if they didn't have one already.
Oh, okay.
And list the 3 most important macro relative features of that camera to you, the things that are most important to you. I just wanted everybody to hear everybody else's experience with choosing a camera for macro. Is nothing like as exciting as the choosing a lens for macro, which is coming up this week.
Yes,
that's a really contentious topic.
Right.
But the camera thing, I still wanted everybody to get an opportunity to say, these are the 3 things I can't live without. Why the D850? Just because it's an everything camera, or was there something in particular that you wanted?
It was above my head, and I wanted to learn more. Like I was saying, restart my photography experience, and the price was right. So, and I knew it would be good for most any direction I, went. General family photographs and specialty items such as macro photography. So
I think that it really truly is one of the best macro cameras there is. If you're comfortable shooting full frame, which has its issues certainly, but the fact that it performs so well in low light is a real macro bonus, and the focus shift shooting as well.
can
May
one
I?
go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I just wanted to say that I've been poking around certain websites. It's from reputable sellers like B&H and Sammy's Camera. It's down to like brand new $24.50, like, or
It's
$24.99.
$1,000 less than I paid for it.
Yeah, so they've dropped it twice in the past few months. So it's kind of a steal if you're scratching your head thinking if you want it. I don't know if it'll get any lower. They're going to run out of them eventually. But
Yeah,
I
some
wanna
people
get
are
one.
talking about getting some people are talking about getting a that shoot with it are talking about getting another one, going ahead and buy at the lower price.
I'm planning on doing it, but you've got to be careful if you're not using the camera, the internal batteries, and you've got to be careful that you don't open it up in 10 years and it's dead. I don't know what the rules are for keeping one alive in a box for however many years, but I'm thinking of doing that too. There'll never be a better camera. We'll just be buying them used 4 years from now.
I think too that even, all the people who are loving the mirrorless, obviously the Z9 is insanely great if you can afford it. But even those people are saying that the low ISO, where you could do at 50 ISO, I don't know if other cameras have that. I mean, that's something that the quality of that sensor and the fact that it could go as low as ISO 50 is great for this type of stuff.
Yeah. And just
May I?
there's a
Sony
there's a
has that.
May I ask a question?
yes, of course.
Alan, you have emphasized several times that the best camera is the one you have.
Yes.
And anyway, I would like you to elaborate, if possible, on the advantages and disadvantages of APS-C and full frame,
Yeah.
or DSLR and mirrorless. Can you elaborate on that, please?
Yes. They're two different questions that I kind of mixed up my answers to in the video, because a lot of the answers are the same. The decision whether or not to use a full frame or an APS-C is very much personal, and the issues that are impacted by that decision are image quality. I think that most of us who use full frame would say that the full frame camera has an edge. I've even been shooting with the Canon 5D Mark II for the last couple of weeks, and that has a better image quality than the crop frame Canons do. So it seems to be a universal richness to the image. Then some people can't deal with the file size, which is why I don't stack with a full frame, because of the massive amount of data it accumulates. But the reason that I do use full frame for all my field macro is because of the things that come with a full frame DSLR camera, also with mirrorless these days, but the buttons. That sounds like a silly reason to pick a camera because it's got more buttons, but it's those buttons that allow me to operate the camera without having to use my brain or my eyes, which is the whole point of macro photography. So you can't really, unless you're going with a camera like the D500, and I don't know if they even make the D500 anymore. It's an APS-C Nikon that has all of the bells and whistles of a full frame, but most APS-Cs are built and designed for amateurs, enthusiastic amateurs, and that's where the problems come in for me. It's not really image quality. The sensors, I've got a 24 megapixel sensor on my D7500, which is an APS-C. and the image quality is stunning. It's really excellent. I wouldn't be able to tell the difference between the D850. Yeah, that's the argument over mirrorless and DSLR has so many fine points of contention in it. It largely depends on the mirrorless and the DSLR you're comparing. There is an issue with the mirror. The mirror moving does vibrate the camera, and it can, if you're shooting very fast stacks under continuous light, it can have an impact. So I think that there is a role for mirrorless. I have a problem with electronic viewfinders. They don't look real to me. I don't feel like I'm doing photography with them. So, but that's because I haven't spent enough time.
Some of the, but Alan, some of the new improvements in electronic viewfinders are insane how good they look. People are saying like on like a Z9, it's spectacular.
Haven't looked through a Z9 viewfinder, but I looked through the 7, and it's nice. It's good, but
Well, we'll chip in and get you a Z9 for Christmas.
Yeah, I'll learn to love it then.
And you could tell us all about it. The other thing on the mirror, in favor of a mirror for general, obviously, plus all the more modern features, is if you're into playing with vintage lenses and lenses that are not made for that camera, you know, obviously all the mirror lenses designed for the mirrorless lenses designed for mirrorless cameras. The depth of the flange is interesting because if you get the shallow depth of a mirrorless camera, you could put almost any vintage lens on it because you're not stuck in that situation where if you had a mirror camera, many of the lens manufacturers, they won't work on it because of the flange distance. But since it's so much thinner on a mirrorless, you could have so much fun with even the oldest of lenses.
Yeah, that's why you don't see adapters for putting mirrorless lenses on DSLR cameras, because you can't get the lens any closer to the sensor, and it's made to be at 22 millimeters, the flange focal distance on the Z9.
I don't remember.
About half the D850.
I'm just using an R5 right now, and I'm finding that the electronic viewfinder is actually pretty nice. It's
I shot with that last weekend. I had it for a couple of days, and yeah, it was nice. It's nice feeling camera for a mirrorless.
I mean, and then there's also, are you going to do video work with it? Because they all have incredibly high resolution files that you could use in different frame rates and amazing face and animal eye tracking. Just
the eye tracking is incredible.
Yeah, that would blow away any D850. If you're doing that, if you're doing wildlife and you need that, or if you're doing a lot of video that involves following people without focused breathing. But I think it comes back full circle for the stuff that this group is most interested in doing. That 850 is just a spectacular piece of engineering.
That Steve, that R5, what glass are you using on it for your macro? Steve?
I think he froze.
Yeah. Okay, well, not to worry. Okay. I'm interested. Steve, can you hear me? No.
Yeah, he's frozen.
Okay, not to worry. The decision to change camera because you're starting macro would be probably a fairly precipitous thing to do. And I'm not sure I'd recommend that to anybody I was introducing to macro. I'd probably suggest you just take whatever you've got and stick a diopter on the end of it and see if getting close to stuff is even your thing. There is such a commitment that goes with buying a new camera, especially buying a different camera system from a different brand. I was tempted after shooting with this Canon to look at the latest Canon DSLR, the Mark 6, I think it is. And it was only you can get the camera quite inexpensively now, but the only thing that stopped me in my tracks was the fact that I have to buy all new glass for it. And, you know, you're talking about buying that EFL glass for it, and not going to do that. But yeah, I think that the argument for DSLR versus mirrorless for macro is probably one that is unresolvable, because I don't think there's really an advantage. It's what you shoot with best. Has anybody used any of the, we're going to get ahead of ourselves by just a few days. Does anybody out there have one of the new mirrorless Nikon 105? They're called the Micro Zs, the new macro lenses. Has anybody used it?
No.
I've been hearing some remarkable things about that 105, about it being sharper than anything else in their armory. I believe it when I say it.
That's next on my planned purchase. To get used to the mirrorless system, I bought a Z5, and that's my kick around, you know, social camera. But anyway, I've been reading the reviews trying to figure out, because I have an old one, the same thing in the not the mirrorless system, but
a D3400 or something.
Oh no, I mean, I have an old
Canon
Nikon start again. Nikon 105 micro Nikkor.
Oh yeah, the old version. That was,
yeah, it doesn't have any
lens.
doesn't have any image stabilization or anything.
Yeah.
So
That's still
I
a
would
very good lens.
I would already have bought it, but the fact that I have that one, but I plan to get that and put it on the Z5, realizing that the Z5 is, not as good, of course, as the Z9. I have another question if you want to take it up later. With the D850, there's a setting about shooting in the DX mode.
Mhm.
Have you ever done that when you focus stacked, or
honestly, it crops into 1.5, just like if you were using a DX camera. But the thing is, it's not a DX, so you're cropping in. But if you're using a DX lens on the full frame camera, you're still not going to get the advantage of using the good FX glass on an FX camera. So I don't bother with it. I don't bother cropping. If I want to crop, I'll grab my crop camera and I'll shoot DX glass on a DX camera.
Excellent.
You could shoot FX glass on the full frame camera in the crop mode, and it would give you the smaller crop pictures. But why would you do that? You bought a full frame camera. I've never understood the purpose of having that setting, but
it's if you're going to use a APS-C lens on it.
Yeah, except that doesn't look very good. I mean, those APS-C lenses they don't have the same resolving power that the FX lenses do.
No, of course not.
Yeah.
But my last camera was an APS-C camera, so I still have quite a few. I have a couple of APS-C lenses that I'm not prepared.
Do you have any good APS-C, really good ones that you? I've got a couple. The DX 85mm macro lens is a stonker.
I have a Canon 60mm macro APS-C lens, and they're 35mm macro APS-C lens. They're okay. They're not their L series lenses, but they were my starter lenses.
That 85mm was a starter lens for me, and I use it as much as I use my full frame 90 millimeter macro lens. It's just very, very sharp, and it has VR back when not all lenses did. I love
Right
it.
now I'm using a Tamron 90 mil
Me
EF
too.
lens on my RF with an adapter. The only RF macro lenses out there right now are made at Canon, and of their 3 or 4 macro lenses, only one of them is an actual macro lens. The other are not quite macro.
Yeah, 1 to 2s.
1 to 2s, yeah.
Well, I'm
By the way,
really
I'm going to be
excited about the lens discussion, because there is so much good new glass out there and so much absolute rubbish too. It's going to be fun.
By the way, I'm going to be blinking in and out. I'm off grid, working off of a cell tower about 5 miles away that every boat in Howe Sound is connected
Watching
to.
my
So,
seminar.
Okay, well, not to worry. We'll be aware of that. I was asking you a question after the last time we spoke, and you disappeared and froze. So I'll bear that in mind next time.
Okay, what was your question?
I can't remember. It was ages ago.
Okay.
Mike, what were we talking about? Do you remember?
I don't.
Oh, it
You
was
were
about.
Oh, I think I
Colin,
was
you were
mentioning.
asking-
I was
Colin,
mentioning
you were
that,
asking about glass on an R5.
yeah, we were talking about eye tracking on
That's
the,
right. That's right.
on the R5, and I was pointing my camera out at the where I'm currently at.
Oh,
and on my
wow.
and on my deck, I'm filming eagles and buzzards and seagulls and the occasional hummingbird. And so I've been playing quite a bit with the eye tracking, and it's absolutely.
Where are you
incredible.
based out of, Steve?
I'm in. I live in the Vancouver area, but right now we have a cottage, a waterfront cottage on Gambier Island, if you know the area at all.
I've heard of it, yeah.
If you look
And,
out my porch window, you can photograph Walmart shoppers. Is about the only wildlife we have on my street.
Now we feed the crabs from our deck.
Must be lovely.
So I know there are a lot of variety of cameras and lenses. We've been talking about, entry lenses to macro. So could there be an idea just to assemble a list of entry macro lenses for each major camera type? I know I'm not familiar with Nikon, but on the Canon side, most lenses are backward compatible with some sort of converter. So any macro lens that Canon would probably fit any modern Canon camera. So just to make it very simple.
I would suggest going for a used lens.
Yeah, used lens, just, one that has a low price point for beginners, so that they can perhaps pick up a used one and experiment with and see if they like it.
I said this on the video that went on YouTube, not on your video, I don't think. But next week in the lens discussion, I am putting together a whole PDF chart that lists the top 3 macro lenses in your camera brand. So I'll hit all the major camera brands, and I'm listing them based on lenses that I've used, but also lenses that I haven't used but know about. And they're going to be in a range of price points. So there'll be a less expensive a DX or a crop frame camera lens, as well as their best full frame lens, and usually one other, like the Nikon 200 millimeter f4 that doesn't fit anywhere else. So you will have the cream of the crop in that PDF, and I'll be putting that out with your video this week.
There's also a dividing line where if you go on one side of it, it opens up a whole world of possibilities, because if you want a macro lens from your camera brand to just attach to your camera, and you plan on using all the stabilization and any other automated features, that's one thing. But the minute you break that barrier, if you're going to use extension tubes or a bellows, you could put anything on any camera
Mhm.
because you're not going to be using any of the automatic features.
Yep.
And that's where things get really cool, like with vintage stuff, or you know, you cannot put a Canon lens on a Nikon camera. That won't work. But you could do it the other way around, and even just directly attached to the camera with like a photodiox thing. But so, you know, it depends what your requirements are. If you need the automation and you're going directly lens to camera, that's different.
There are, interestingly, at the bottom end of the market, there are some cameras that you would think that for putting on a rail and focus stacking, that any camera, any sensor would do. But there are actually some issues with, for example, the entry-level DSLR by Nikon doesn't have a remote plugin. There is literally no wired remote. So there would be no way to use a stack shot. There would be no way to use a trigger. So there are entry level, not every camera can be used for focus stacking. And certainly not every camera can be used to automatically change your focus during a focus stack where you're using the ring and not the rail. So you've got to, if you're at the very entry level, I made an argument in this video that's coming up that, no, in the last video, that you could make it, it would be reasonable to go one model above the starting model, just so you don't have to spend all that time in the computer menus. Does anyone have any Leica macro lenses? Yes, Trisha, I've had 2 of them for the last week, and I know that everybody out there, I think, has got at least one. Last week, I had the 100mm f2.8, which is a 2-to-1 lens, and the other one was the 2.5 to 5x, which I tested. I've got videos on all of these. I tested it on the rail and out in the field. And I will be the first to say I was blown away. They were much, much better than I remembered from the 5X, but also better than I expected. I do have one comment to make about the world famous proclamation by our lens guru, Mr. Robert O'Toole, who is quoted often as saying that 2.5 to 5x lens is sharper than a Mitutoyo 5x objective. I would take exception to that, and I'll explain why if anybody's interested. Does that answer your question? They're the 2 most popular macro lenses that they make, as far as I know.
Yes.
Who else has got those lenses?
So go ahead and tell.
What was the question? Sorry, who else have the Leica lenses?
Yeah, if anybody's got any experience with the Leica lenses, the Leica macro lenses. They also make the very, very nice wide angle macro that I really want to get my hands on someday. Go ahead, Moretti.
I only have the 50mm wide angle macro, which is, I only tried to use it a couple times. I think it's definitely hard to use, but you can get some really unique pictures. So I am committed to teaching myself how to use that.
That's a 15mm. Yeah, that is
Yeah.
very hard to use, that camera.
Yeah. But I am committed.
I must say I found the 100 quite difficult to use for a macro lens. It's a manual lens, which I like because that's the way I use it anyway, but it has a very stiff focusing ring, and it didn't feel as well balanced as like the 200 on my big camera. And the 2.5 to 5 is a real quirky little lens. It really is, but it's sharp.
So what you tell about your comparison between the Mitutoyo and the.
Yeah, I mean, you'll hear this or read it on forums where where people will say they shoot with this 2.5 to 5x because it's sharper than a Mitutoyo. That's what the testing shows. That wasn't at all what Robert O'Toole said, but I'll tell you what, I am going to actually pull up the quote. So talk amongst yourselves. Seriously, talk amongst yourselves while I do this.
What's the subject? You have to give a subject.
You don't need us. You talk when I'm not there,
Okay.
Mike. Make
I-
some.
I can give, I started out as when I was new to my digital camera, I got 100mm Canon macro lens, and it's the old version, not the new version. And
Mhm.
that's at least very easy to use, and it gives really nice picture without too much effort. So from a beginner's perspective, that's a very rewarding lens to work with, I think.
Does anybody else have that? That's one
I
of the
have that.
lenses.
I have that lens. I mean, I have the stabilized version of it, so I don't know, Morete, if you're saying you have the one that wasn't
Yeah,
stabilized.
the non-stabilized.
They both are very good. But and I didn't know any better back then, so I thought, wow, you know, this is Canon. It's one of their better macro lenses supposedly, but there's a whole world after that if you want to explore. But it's a great basic macro lens. But I'm not going to say it's, you know, the end all. But
Yeah, and the good thing with the 100mm, if you're into portrait, for example, you can
beautiful
double
film.
that as a portrait lens. You can get
Yeah.
more out of it than just shooting macro with it. It's a
Yes.
versatile lens.
And like you said, it's just a piece of cake to use.
I can compare the Laowa 2.5 to 5 and the MP65, the Canon MP65.
Please
and
do.
I think the results are very similar, but the Laowa is much, much easier to get light in around it because it's so small in diameter. And it makes it's just a whole different world. I mean, one of them's half the diameter of the other at the long end. I've also got one of the wide angle Laowas, and I'd be happy to loan it to you. I can mail it to you if you want to play with it.
You have the wide angle. Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
I'm not looking at the screen. I'm trying to find this article. But gosh, yeah, we'll talk.
Yeah. Okay. I found it's really wide, but it really works neat, like at the beach if you're shooting dune flowers or something like that, and you want to background the whole ocean into it.
Oh yeah, I love the effect. I mean, I did a video on it a few months ago. It's great fun.
Yeah,
it's just difficult.
Phil, question on that 2.5 to 5. When you're at 5, what's the working distance typically?
I've never measured it, but it's small. And that's the disadvantage with the big diameter, is the big diameter on the MP65 is that you've got to get the light in around that barrel, and it's hard.
So let's say if a Mitutoyo 5X and whatever relay lens you're using, let's just leave that up to whatever you think is the best. That's a 30mm working distance, and obviously tiny thin lens compared to these other lenses. So I'm just curious, at 5X magnification, whoever's got that Laowa 2.5 to 5, what would you estimate in inches or millimeters, you know, front of the lens to subject distance?
It's about the same. It's about the same. I mean, I shot it on the rail so that I could compare apples to apples. The problem is this is what happens when O'Toole looks at two lenses. He will make a statement that is taken out of context. And this is the same problem that we had when we were talking about the using the various different relay lenses on full frame and crop frame cameras. What he actually said in his article, and it's way deep into one of his articles towards the end, where he compared the Mitutoyo 5X to the this 25 millimeter Leiwa at 5X. He said that the Leiwa was surprisingly good, highly recommended at the price, that it had a large enough image circle to completely cover a full frame sensor. And this is the key. But it also had field curvature. It also had chromatic aberrations. The apochromatic lens had none of that, but it didn't cover a full frame sensor. Yeah. So his bottom line is the 5X camera lens wins on the basis of that, which is not what he says in the article. So yeah, I would take that with a grain of salt. It is a nice lens and it's great fun to use. It's particularly good using it on the rail as a manual lens, but it is not a 5X Mitutoyo, I'll tell you that. Not even close.
So I have a question. I mean, the first hour was supposed to be kind of geared towards entry-level beginners. And I know you had told me earlier, Alan, that you don't like extension tubes very much, but it is a fact that that's probably the cheapest way to get into macro photography for beginners, as they probably might have a 50 millimeter camera and could put extension tubes on that. So can we talk a little bit about that?
Mm-hmm. I'm going to talk a lot about it when we talk about lenses, because this next video that's coming out, I am going to specifically talk about macro lenses, because, and then I'll give the reasons why these forms of macro lead to a lot of people not sticking with macro, because they're difficult to use. It's difficult to use extension tubes because you lose infinity focus, you lose light. It makes them hard to use in the field. And for all these reasons, they're not a good beginner lens. But what I'm going to do later in the series, for those people who are interested, is I'll show you how to do it. But I consider extension tube macro photography to be a relatively advanced macro skill, like reverse lens macro photography is. Whenever you take away the ability to control the camera, control the lens by the camera, I think you're in advanced territory. And it does hugely change what you have to worry about when you're using extension tubes. If you're talking about just sticking 20 millimeters on your 50 just to get a slightly closer in shot, it's doable, but you still perturb the normal functions of the lens. And if you don't understand how the relationship between the lens and the camera and the sensor, you're just gonna make a lot of rubbishy shots.
This is interesting. Alan Lyle just wrote in the chat that the Leiwa 5X has a focusing distance of 17.3 centimeter. So if that's really centimeters, that's 173 millimeters. Are you sure, Alan, that it was that long?
That's millimeters, I'm sure.
Okay. Then that's like just a little more than half of the Mitutoyo, because at 30 millimeters, if it's 17.3 millimeters, that's even less of a
I was struck that I had to have that lens smack up on my subject, which surprised me, because I was thinking camera lens, not microscope objective, but it really feels like a microscope objective.
Well, that makes sense then. If there was a typo and it's 17.3 millimeter, that's, like I said, a little more than half of the Mitutoyo 30 millimeter. So that's pretty tight. If it is 17.3 centimeter, that's a beautiful working distance. So
yeah, it's 9 inches. It's the same as most macro lenses.
Yeah, he's got a link here. I'm going to check that out on the spec. He put it into the chat bar.
If that's the minimum focus distance to get 2.5x is 23 centimeters. Yeah. Well, you can't focus any closer than that. And I felt like I was a lot closer than that. Well, I'll tell you what, I've got it in the other room. Chat amongst yourselves.
So, yeah, I just pulled up from cameralabs.com that the focal distance for the 5 is 17.17 meters, and which is 0.56 of a foot, so it's 6 inches or 5 inches, and at 2 it's 0.75 of a foot, which would be 9 inches.
So that 17.3 centimeter figure that was quoted is correct.
Yeah.
So that's a lot more working distance. That's 173 versus 30 millimeter on the Mitutoyo.
Be a little careful about.
I'm just measuring it right now with
being specified.
a ruler and a pair of scissors.
Two people seem to be talking, so I don't know who said what.
So this is Rick Littlefield. And
Hi, Rick.
What I started to say was that we need to be a little bit careful about exactly what's being specified. There's a long-standing tradition among lens manufacturers that when they say minimum focusing distance, they're talking about measuring from the sensor plane. Not working distance from the front of the lens like we actually care about. So I'll be very interested to see what Alan finds when he pulls that lens up and focuses it on something.
I just was shooting with it the other day, and I know that it was, yeah, about 37 from there. I've lost the battery though. Anybody got a Canon battery?
I just measured it on my desk, and it's about 40 millimeters.
Yeah.
40? Yeah. That sounds right.
All right, so if that's in the ballpark, it's a little bit longer than the lens to subject on a Mitutoyo on the working distance for that.
Yeah, I thought it was a little bit shorter, but yeah, I can accept that.
Well, you know, at that distance, every millimeter matters. I mean, you know, when you used to be recommending the 10x Nikkor, the Nikon objective,
I still recommend that.
that thing you're like nearly touching whatever you're shooting.
10.5 millimeters.
Yeah, there's it's not a lot of room to get lighting in.
No, it's a problem at 10.5, but you know, once you're above 30, you might as well be a mile away. Okay, well, I've lost the battery. I only got one battery. So we've got 10 more minutes left to
Yeah,
deal
I had
with
a question.
beginner
Which
issues.
I
Yes.
had since I'm beginner. Infinity focus. What is that?
The ability to focus on things that are far away.
Okay, so you said when you put on extension tube, you lose infinity focus. What does that mean?
That means when you extend the camera is made to focus an image onto the sensor with the lens where it is. If you move the lens away from the camera and you lengthen the image distance so that you can shorten the subject distance, in other words, get closer, what you do is you limit where the image can form to a narrow band of what it used to be, meaning that you can focus at the minimum focus distance, which is now going to be closer. But when you move beyond that, you fall back out of focus because now it's trying to focus the image behind the sensor. So you know, with a macro lens, you can take a picture of, you can do a portrait, or you can take a picture of the pyramids with your macro lens because you can focus as far away as you want. You lose that ability with extension tubes.
So if I put on the extension tube, I can't like focus on things far away. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
That's
probably
what's,
not even like a portrait. It probably won't work.
You can
Right,
focus
right.
within a very narrow band.
Okay. But if what I'm wanting to take a picture of is within the narrow band, wouldn't that be okay then?
Yes, yes. It's
Yeah.
just you can no longer trust the camera. If you use the camera's metering to judge the
Yes.
light, you have to take into account the fact that you've added a lot of distance and there's less light getting to the sensor and to your eye. So you need to adapt to that. You need to learn how to take pictures in lower light. It also makes lens blur more of a problem, but when you're adding this weight out front, it's less stable.
Right. So because
and of course you lose the ability to connect to your camera unless you're using a certain type of extension tube.
So I know that you lose light, and I know that usually, unless you have a very expensive extension tube, you turn basically into manual work. So in that way, it is more complicated than buying a macro lens. To using a dedicated macro lens.
Believe me, I am one of the most outspoken advocates of doing crazy stuff with lenses. I am all about using reversed lenses and stacked lenses and lenses that aren't made for photography. That's great. This series is about helping individual beginners who don't know any of this stuff to find their way in what I consider to be the safest path to get into macro. And I don't think extension tubes would fall in that category. But Mr. Littlefield, I bet, has got a feeling about this.
I have one more thing to add, which I kind of forget. Yes, so talking about the getting people on the path to macro without having them to fall off on the way, is stacking, I think, is something that will be a hurdle for a lot of people. So it would be great if we could, and since beginners aren't doing like high magnification macro, it would be great if you could show example of macro pictures you can do without stacking, perhaps, or without taking crazy stacks, because I know both taking a stacks and stitching together without a dedicated stacking program is a major hurdle, or could be a major hurdle for people who wants to get into macro.
Well, as it just so happens, what I'm going to be doing after the lens video, there's going to be one other video, and then the 5th video in the series, I'm going to be introducing my new student who's going to be with me for the rest of the video series. And one of the first things that we're going to do is manual focus stacking on without a rail on a table with some lights. Basic introduction to exactly what you just said. So if you watch that video and the subsequent videos, you will know it all.
I think, Marete, it's really something you eventually have to embrace, because whether you say, forget about getting a rail, you could do like what Alan says, you could use, some cameras have the built-in offsets for the focus stacking, but even if you're using a macro lens like attached directly to the camera and you're shooting flowers or something, if you're going to find that unless you stopped way down, which you never want to do, going even beyond the optimum aperture, let's say of at 5, 6, or 8, that just 3 or 4 exposures on a flower, let's say, are going to they're going to nail it for you. And then you could stack that in Photoshop the same way you would stack 3 pictures of a landscape focus sprocket. So you don't even necessarily need that. But I kind of feel, though, that once you do this the first time, it's going to blow your mind. And it did to me. It was almost as cool as watching a picture develop in a tray of chemicals when I was a kid. That's why you want something like Zareen, or where it's just so worth it, because it just opens up the next door of the cave, and that's where the fun really starts.
But you can get started with Photoshop, and
yes.
That's a quick way to do it. And it doesn't do a great job, but
on simple stacks it can. I want to complete that thought before we go on, and I do want to ask Rick's, if he's still on. I want to ask Rick's opinion about extension tubes as a learning tool for macro. But I do want to make one point first, that my new student is Marete, and she and I are going to be going through a whole series of exercises together in some videos coming up as part of this series. So she was lobbing me a softball, as we say in sporting circles. Rick, do you have a feeling about the advisability of using something as contrived as extension tubes for a beginner in macro photography?
Well, I first started in macro photography like 60 years ago with a magnifying glass in front of an Argus C3 rangefinder camera. And from there, I graduated. The next step was to extension tubes. So I'm not sure that my opinions can be in any sense considered unbiased. I have too long of a history with extension tubes. They're perfectly reasonable tools. I get really, really nervous every time I see an advertisement or a review that says, oh, extension tubes are wonderful because they don't have any glass in them to mess up your image. Of course, if glass is going to mess up your image, you've got to wonder why we use lenses at all.
Yeah.
But the thing that the reviews miss is that when you stick an extension tube behind the lens, you're taking that lens away from its as designed focus point. And doing that introduces some aberrations, which can range from totally insignificant to total image killers. A lot of the classic, as in 1950s, 60s literature about close-up photography points out that if you take what was then a standard lens, like an f1.8 50mm lens, and you extend it to 1:1 by sticking 50mm extension tube behind it, you better be prepared to stop that thing down to f11 or f16, or your image quality is going to totally suck. So, they're cheap. They get the job done. I think they're perfectly reasonable introductory tools, but they're not going to make the best images you've ever seen.
And the other thing too, to add on to an extension tube, if you could find it for the tubes using, is a helicoid adapter, because then you've actually got the ability to, within a small range, it's as if you're focusing like a regular camera. You'll see it expand and contract. It's threads that go from one tube to another. So but I also feel that you can get a beautiful Nikon bellows on eBay for not too much money, and that's
$200.
Yeah, that's great. And sometimes the extension tubes are a little rickety depending on who you got them from.
Whenever I say extension tubes, what I mean is bellows anyway, because I'll talk you into getting bellows instead. They're so much better.
I blinked out during the focus distance discussion. And I'm just wondering, did you folks touch on the focus distance for an MPE 65 while I was reconnecting?
No.
We did not. What is it?
Well, at 5x, it's 40mm.
That's about what we discovered for the Leica, for this lens, though.
Okay.
I haven't been able to measure it because I can't find the battery.
But if you look at that compared to 30 on the Mitutoyo, that extra 10mm is a considerable percentage.
Yeah,
if that's what you're about.
It's not the important 10% though.
Right. No, but it's not 10%. It's way more than 10%.
I mean, 10mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, if I was to put the MPE 65 on an extension tube, what kind of magnification can I get at, say, a 12 or 20mm extension tube?
Well, it's going to be what is your effective aperture at that extension. It's already got to be over acceptable maximum, I would think.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Well, the other issue is that the MPE 65 at maximum magnification is actually about a 45mm focal length effective lens. And so when you add 45mm extension behind it, you only increase your magnification by an additive factor of 1. So it only goes up from 5 to 6.
Oh, so it's not really worth the effort then.
Yeah, adding extension behind an MP65 is sort of pointless.
Rick, your microphone is really wonky. They're very difficult to understand.
Yeah.
Oh, it's up by your head.
That's because I flipped it up by my hand at some point and totally forgot about it.
Well, now we read you loud and clear.
Okay. There was no indication on my screen that there was anything funny happening at all. Now that I have the microphone down where it should be, I realize there is an indication in my ears that it's different, but it was not enough to call attention to it. So thank you for that.
Where did our fearless leader go?
He's right here. I'm finding that battery before this day is over. I tell you what we'll do. We're at the end of our first hour.
Do you want to stop the recording, Alan?
You know, I'm going to put it out as I'll chop it in half and
Okay.
package it as
All right,
two.
so
We don't need it
leave it.
separate.
There's a question in chat that's relevant. Jeremy C asks, is not adding extension tubes to that lens what Andy Murray is doing? Yes, Andy Murray is doing that.
Oh gosh, is he ever? Yeah.
Yeah, and he's adding a lot of extension behind it, and he's doing that because it's sort of the only way that he can operate in the environment that he needs to operate in. The nice thing about the MPE65 on extension tubes is that if they are automatic extension tubes, the MPE65 has automatic diaphragm operation in the field. So you can go out in these painful circumstances like Andy handles and focus with the lens wide open, and then it will automatically stop down when you take that picture.
There you go. Right there. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, I use my MP65 when I'm working outside in the field, but other than that, it just sits in a drawer, and I use other lenses for all my studio stuff.
Well, I've got one coming that was supposed to be here last week sometime, and I've only got this Canon for a few more days, so I hope it arrives. I really want to give it a try. Do you concur with the comments that Robert O'Toole made about the MPE65 being not as good a lens as it was cracked up to be? He was disappointed in it.
Or was it the Laowa?
No, he loved the Laowa.
Okay.
He loved that. He was all full of praise for that. But his testing on the MPE65, a lot of chromatic aberration. He didn't recommend it over, I guess, about 3 times magnification. I'd have to read the article again.
I will agree with that assessment. It does have a lot of chromatic aberration. From my standpoint, the nice thing about the MPE65 is the optics are okay. And the thing is built like a tank, and it goes from 1x to 5x, and it has automatic diaphragm. So for field use, it's wonderful.
That is what I've heard. Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do, just so that we stay on schedule. We can always loop back to more beginner stuff if need be when we get through. But we're going to take just a very brief pause for Bill to say a few words. Bill, the floor is yours.
Okay, well, thank you. I think that everybody here that's been in this session realizes that Alan really wants to get feedback from people on what they need to develop their skills in macro photography. So he decided to set up a advisory group and asked me to head it up. And we've put together a group of really good people, 3 of whom are on the video today, Mike and Susan and Maretta. that have a broad spectrum, as you heard today, in input, but we want to get input from other people too. So feel free to contact any of them if you want, or you can, if you're on Discord, you can personally text me at 3-Wheeler. Wheeler's the last name, and that came from Laughing. Remember 3-Wheeler, the guy from the tricycle? So that's
Artie Johnson.
that's right. So somebody gave me that name, but anyway, so that's easy to remember. But we would love to have any input that people have on how Alan can improve, what he needs to do more of, less of, what he needs to look into other areas so that he can meet everybody's needs. Any questions? So we've got Murata.
Can you hear me, Bill?
Yeah.
With beginners in macro, there's generally a heap of talk about the technical aspects of the lenses and the cameras, but one thing that macro neophytes really need to understand is the exposure triangle. I'd actually call it the more than 3 points, especially when you're shooting outside. Now, if you're going to do it inside, there's no problem really. It's a simple thing. But once you get outside and you're shooting in, say, bright sun, and if you're using fill-in flash, and if you want to shoot at a high frame rate with that flash for, let's say, flying insects, there are a lot of considerations that you have to take into account. And I think it would be good for beginners to realise that it's not as simple as it sounds once you get outside, trying to balance that flash, the exposure, ISO and all this sort of stuff. So, it'd be good for beginners to hear a lot about that.
Good, Bruce.
Alan's back and he heard that. So
yeah, I actually, that was the exercise after the first video in the series. We talked about the exposure triangle and about getting outdoors with the camera and getting familiar with your manual settings again. So we'll be beating that to death over the coming series of videos. I did find the battery. It was unbelievably sitting right by the camera when I grabbed the camera. Anyway, neither here nor there. I do want to make a
But Alan,
yeah.
Since you're on the topic of the battery, there's a question in chat. Alan, why do you need a battery? Have you not got an optical path on your camera?
Well, I want to take a picture.
I think many of us, including myself, were assuming you just wanted to look through your camera, and the viewfinder was not working properly without the battery.
No, the viewfinder works fine, but there's no way for me to take a picture without a battery.
I can send you a battery, Alan, but it'll take a while.
Don't even bother, Bruce. This is terribly, terribly stiff. This focus, the extension part of this. I guess that's just the way they make it. All right, so.
Is it even a focus ring, or is it the ring just to set the magnification?
It's just to set the magnification.
Right, so the focus is you pulling or pushing the camera. That's it.
Yeah, I just meant the extender thing. Yeah, it's about 30 centimeters, maybe 40 centimeters, millimeters.
Yeah, that seems to be the consensus we got today.
Yeah, the reason that what I wanted to do was use focus peaking, because I'm a little bit blind, and that would be the easiest way for me to see where the minimum focus distance is. It's the same as with my eye. Yep. So it's measuring from the sensor then. So before we move on to well, I guess we've already moved on to feedback, but this is going back today. I just wanted to warn anybody, if you feel like $200 is just too little money for a lens to pass up, and you want to get this 4.5x lens, don't get it. Don't get it. It's a Mitacon Zongi ultra super macro lens. That's it, fully extended and all the way back in.
How did that even get to you?
It's a long story.
Or
Don't ask.
Okay, never mind.
It is truly a shocking lens. It has a tremendous amount of geometric distortion, and the CA is unbelievable. It's like psychedelic. I just found it out there. I forgot to put it in the mail to Amazon yesterday. It was a gift that I ended up paying for. So,
are we taking a break for between the next session? Or are we rolling?
We can, if you guys would like to grab a cup of tea or whatever you need to do. We'll take a 5-minute break and then reconvene at 15 after to talk about feedback.
So Rick, you've got that moth up again, huh? Your background?
Exactly. I just put that up because I figured it was kind of interesting and kind of bland.
That was a nice discussion.
Yeah. Graham, I really like your background.
Oh, thank you very much.
The black texturing is just wonderful. What subject is that?
That's, I'm in the UK. It's a garden ant, the head of which measures about 1 millimeter across, and that's using a MIT 10 and an ITL 200.
Very cool.
It's so gorgeous.
That is perfection. I love it.
It's the lens, not me.
You said it was a MIT 10 and the ITL 200?
I did, yes.
Was it short focused or
no,
infinity?
No, infinity. I've yet to try the short focus.
I have been blown away by it. I must say, blown away by it. I did a formal test of it a few weeks ago and switched over to using it this week. It really does make a difference.
So Graham, did you shoot that APS-C or you cropped it a little out of full frame?
I shot APS-C, but to be honest, I'm thinking of moving over to full frame despite the processing problems with it. I'm using a Canon R5, and I just find the quality of the images fantastic compared with DSLRs. And I don't think I'll ever go back. I still have DSLRs, but I don't think I'll ever go back. I'll stick with mirrorless now, having seen that, and using the mechanical shutter on an R5, you get minimum vibration. So it's a great camera.
Oh, that's two people. Steve, you're also shooting that, right? I think Steve is. You know, a camera that I've never.
Yeah, I just
shot.
got it not too long ago, so I'm still learning it. But yeah, I'm pretty impressed with it so far.
Has anybody ever shot the Lumix S5? I think. I had never used a medium, a micro four thirds camera, and a very impressive camera that is. Or is it an APS-C? I can't remember. Well, we will get right back into it then. This section today is really just a feedback loop. We haven't spoken in a few weeks now. You probably picked up on how the changes are going to look as far as the video that's being put out early to you guys with a little more information in it. I've also been making a lot of other smaller videos and keeping them coming on your channel, but I'm all ears if you have something you want to see or something you don't want to see. Now's your chance to lay it on the line. And if you don't want to talk to me about it, of course, that's what Bill's for. That is an impressive picture behind you, Al. What is that?
Oh, that's our expensive bridge that was 2 years late in being built and hundreds of millions of dollars in cost overruns.
Nice fireworks, though. Where is it?
That's in Edmonton, which is the city next to us. And we did a spin-off there basically about 5 days after the bridge was completed.
It's beautiful, beautiful picture. Al, you're a
made it.
Yep, he sure did. You're a journalist, and
not anymore.
Well, you were at one point a journalist, and I think Alan, were you not also? But I had a question for you as a journalist who presumably had never done much macro in your profession, in your professional life. How big of a transition was it for you to become a beginner in a new discipline of photography? Was it just a matter of figuring it all out, or did it take a real learning period?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
Oh, I've been doing macros since probably the early 1980s.
Oh, okay.
And when I was working in Lloydminster, which is about 2.5 hours east of here, the high school allowed me to use their microscopes in their lab after school. So I had a personal project with what I would call the slough creatures of a neighboring pond, and I would collect them and I would go after school and use their microscopes and photograph fairy shrimp and all kinds of different things. So yeah, I've been doing it for a couple of years.
I don't know why I thought that you had recently come to it, but anybody else got an experience of coming from a different discipline to macro, and how hard or easy you found it? It's a group that I worry about making sure that I have covered with these videos, is people who are very accomplished lifelong photographers who are trying to learn a new discipline like this, of quite how to present the information usefully.
You know, it sounds like the majority of us have been doing photography in 20 and 40 and 50 years. So it's like once you master any aspect of it, the principles overlap so many places. I think what's more daunting is if someone's just starting to dabble in photography, to then say, and I think I'll choose macro photography. You know, it's not an easy combination.
No, but they're the funnest ones to teach, though.
Right. Sometimes less is more. The less you know, maybe the more flexible you are.
What I'm
Yeah, yeah.
finding is that my experience with film photography, a lot of that doesn't translate well over to digital. There are some differences that are significant.
Such
as? Well, you know, initially I felt that noise was a similar issue to graininess at higher ISOs, and it's not. It's, you know, it's considerably different because you're getting, you know, color casts and things like that, but also the fact that you can, through some digital wizardry, you can edit out a lot of that noise.
Yeah.
And of course, just the post-processing. What I used to do in a dark room doesn't translate well over to Lightroom or Photoshop.
True.
I think, though, that the fundamentals of photography, whether the image hits a digital sensor or film, are so similar. Just understanding how lenses and exposure and lighting work, you know, if you got that down, and
yeah,
it's not
exactly.
rocket science.
So it's close enough to be deceiving, but there are some subtle differences that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Which do you prefer, Steve?
Well, digital for sure. I mean, it's you know, I don't miss messing with chemicals and spending my days in dark rooms and stuff like that. So,
are there any of our numbers who are actually doing any film macro right now? I would have been surprised if anybody said they were. That's got to be the worst thing to do with film.
well, and the other big difference, of course, is having to wait days or weeks to see the results of your shots. Like, you can't take a lot of test shots and get instant feedback like we can now. And of course, digital's free and film isn't.
Now, ask a question. Just out of interest, what do you all feel about, especially extreme macro, whether it appeals to people with a more technical background rather than creative?
Well, I'm a techno geek, so I've spent most of my career in tech. So that's pretty much why macro has appealed to me so much, is because of the all the specialty toys and technical gizmos and stuff like that. I actually hate photographing people, so that's kind of.
Do people find it a challenge? Is it? I personally find the problem solving a challenge, and that's what excites me about it as much as the photographs at the end.
That's what gets my juices flowing, is the technical challenge and the troubleshooting, and the fact that, you know, you can use older equipment and you can adapt equipment. It's a lot of DIY involved, which I don't find with, you know, like say portrait photography or landscape photography.
I think there's a certain thing in all of our DNA that's very similar, even though we come from different fields where we're all very meticulous, technically oriented, don't run away from you know, a challenge that's, you know, just short of brain surgery. Sometimes have tolerance for frustration, and I just find that very interesting, getting to know all you from all the different backgrounds. And, you know, obviously if you're a physician and your brain is wired that way, this is not the hardest thing to transition into, but from an engineering background. So, you know what I'm saying? It's like there's that common thread cut from the same cloth. And we probably did a lot of similar things as kids, you know, so here we are finding ourselves as this group. And I just enjoy seeing the diversity, yet there's this commonality to, you know, at this task.
I think it's one of the most fascinating questions. That it's one that that we've skirted around in our conversation, Rick and I talking about this same thing, this dichotomy between the scientific and the artistic, and the types of personalities that get into macro photography. There's no doubt that we're a technical bunch, no doubt. And I think it's reflected in many of the professions and careers that we've chosen. I mean, just the people who've spoken in the last 5 minutes are all technical. So yeah, I think that there is an appeal. I'm not sure if it goes in the other direction. I don't think there are probably many people who get into a technical career because they love macros so much, but certainly we are. I think maybe it rules out a lot of people who are not technical and have problem with physical concepts and the like, would probably be put off by the first day of doing macro.
But, you know, having a techno geek background and, you know, being sort of turned on by the technical aspects of macro, I also am a wood turner and do a lot of artistic stuff in wood. So I'm also challenged by the artistic aspect of doing macro, not just the pure scientific clinical perspective, but also doing something a bit more artistic. And that's something I want to explore a bit more.
I think
that is something I would like to explore more too, because I'm with you on that. This for me is more art than it is science. I've done science my whole life, and this is, hang on.
I think the big opportunity for artistic exploration is in the lighting, because you have to check off the list of all the technical requirements that make a good extreme macro shot, and they are just pure science, most of them. And then you get into the creativity, is the positioning of the insect, what's the pose, but beyond that, like, are you just going to take a ring light and slap it on there and accept that, or are you going to say, here's a key light, here's a backlight, here's a fill light, and treat it as if you were a portrait subject? That's really where the opportunity is, I think, to make a beautiful picture as opposed to a technical representation of something.
I'm also thinking about things like, water drop and splash photography, and some of the more artistic aspects of doing macro in the field with, like backlit mushrooms and glowing mushrooms and glowing ferns and things like that. Sort of, when you show it to people and they don't know what the hell it is, and when you tell them, they're blown away.
Steve, one thing I was thinking of doing, and I'll run this by you right now, see if you think this would appeal. A lot of people don't realize all of the various subgenres of artistic photography that would be classified as macro and would require macro skills to do, whether it's photographing coins or macro video, or I was going to do a short video for the beginners, laying out all of the various genres that these skills are handy in. Would that be of any interest, do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, I firmly believe there's more to macro photography than bugs and flowers.
Yeah.
And that seems to be where everything you see online and in the books is all bugs and flowers, and I love that kind of stuff too. But I also think that there's a lot more, a lot of other applications.
You know what the competition is over on Discord this month?
Mechanisms.
Mechanisms, yes.
Yeah, I have some interesting ideas about it.
Oh, I have a feeling this is going to be a doozy. Yeah. There's a lot of you guys love photographing machines, and there's some great pictures.
Alan, if I may come in, you said that macro photography is more art than science, but nevertheless, I think in your videos, it would be good if you could get into the detail of some of the optics, physics, the laws of optics. I mean, we've been talking about minimum focusing distance. So why is that so?
Yeah.
Why you have to use an extension tube of a certain length. Why is that so? What's the difference between achromatic and apochromatic? I mean, we maybe know, we all know that, but beginners maybe don't.
I take your point, and I very deliberately kind of shied away from that based on feedback I was getting from earlier videos, because I did a whole video on the circle of confusion and on sensor resolutions, and then on the various types of microscope objective, and I found them fascinating, but they were not popular with the viewership. And I think what I've decided makes more sense is to put that type of material in a course where somebody who really wants that material will be motivated to go get it. I'm afraid that it just doesn't have a broad appeal to non-physicists and I mean, it is fascinating, but if you're not into it, it's dry stuff. Any thoughts from anybody else?
I refer to the basis of it, not to get too much in detail.
It's hard for me. It's hard for me.
You know better than I do.
It's hard for me to be basic about that because everything needs an explanation. And by the time I finish talking about it, it's yeah, it's a big subject. But what does everybody else think? Do we need more science?
Science is always good.
I think we need more how-to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like for instance, when you start talking about putting microscope objectives and on bellows with tube lenses and stuff like that, the theory is nice, but what would be really handy for a beginner would be a diagram that says, okay, you need your bellows extended this much from your sensor. You need, you know, your tube lens in a certain place, and you need your larger lens or your microscope objective is mounted this way, and like just a diagram showing where the pieces go and what the measurements are.
Yeah, they're all in there. They're all in the videos. I've done all of those diagrams, and I think my problem is if I've done it. If I have done a diagram, I did an actual live diagram of the filming the setup where I put the lenses in position so you could see how they were attached and everything. But once I've done it once, I think, well, people don't want to hear that again. I just talked about it 3 months ago.
Well, what I'm thinking, Alan, is maybe a diagram to go with the video.
Yeah, yes, the PDFs, I have those on my website with the articles. When I write, I haven't been doing it this month, but when I write an article, all the diagrams are over there. I'm clearly not making a clear enough point of that, am I? I normally link that in the description, but I'll see if there's a way that I can actually drop it into, well, in Patreon, I can put it on your post.
Yeah.
You can also put it in the video, I think is what Steve's saying.
Yeah. I usually do my diagrams in Photoshop and I just put them as a slide. Maybe I don't leave them up for long enough.
Sometimes, you know, it's in a video, but to have to go back through, you know, a 45-minute video and find one diagram.
Alan, yeah, exactly. We brought this up before, where if there was an archive, right, even if it was just like without having to re-edit or do things where, for instance, what Steve brought up about the lens distance, like I know the video, it was a recent one where you had all that and you had the diagrams.
Right.
And even if it was just like a link to the video and it just had a time code to go to.
Yeah.
And there's not the massive effort of having to repackage everything, but just, you know, so going through all the different videos, an index. There's an index somewhere you can go to and you click on it and it takes you right to that video, right to that part of the video.
Alan, you also mentioned that you'd like suggestions as to who else to invite onto these live streams as guest speakers.
Yes, I did ask for that.
And I'm not sure if you could secure this, but if you could get Don Komarechka, that would be very cool.
Get who?
Don Komarechka. Komarechka. But I think he's living in Bulgaria.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's, if I can get Bruce Malcolm from Down Under, we can get Don. He's even closer than Bruce. I'll give it a try.
I don't know anything about Don. Can you tell me?
He's a very popular macro photographer who just recently released a very nice book on he does snowdrop photography. He was one of the first guys, I think, doing that.
That and like frozen bubbles. I mean, he's originally from Ontario, so you know he does a lot of like stuff out in the minus 40-degree temperatures.
Yeah. Well, he does everything in minus 40-degree temperatures because that's what they are.
Yeah, but he's in Bulgaria now. I don't know what the weather's like in Bulgaria.
I will contact him and offer him the invite. He will accept or not. And if he does,
I've listened to a couple of his podcasts, and he's a pretty interesting guy to talk to listen to.
Absolutely, that's a great recommendation.
Okay, so a little bit back to your videos. You talked about the beginner series. I know a lot of us have been teaching in one capacity or the other, but when I put in new teaching material, I'm thinking about how many students are going to come back to me with questions because there was something they didn't understand. And obviously, I want to minimize that because I don't want to spend a lot of time emailing or talking to students who didn't understand my instruction the first time. So usually telling people what to do and having a very long explanation, even scientific or whatnot, for why you're doing it is not usually a good approach because it is important for people to understand why they're doing things, but when you're trying to do things, just clear instructions is better. So perhaps separate out those parts so that people don't fall off if it's supposed to be an instructional. So I guess you can have instructional video versus educational videos. And I think these two needs to be separated a little bit. And for instructional video, like how-to videos, try to make them shorter, make the instructions really clear and have a minimum of actually explanations. And then perhaps then put out educational video where some of these topics are just having a conversation about these topics so that people can understand them in general.
And I understand your point, but in the 3 years that I've been doing this, when I put out a how-to, I get so many questions about why. That's why I started doing these more explanation how-tos to cut down on those emails, which didn't help. I still got them,
I think that's where your premium patron service should come in, where you're having a Q&A session about the videos as a follow-up, where people who watch the video can come and there can be a Q&A session, with the video as a topic, because then, you don't have to answer emails over and over again, and people can see a value of being a patron member.
Absolutely.
When I first,
I'm heavily into hand tool woodworking as well. There's a fellow I follow on YouTube named Wood by Right, and I know this might be in a lot of extra work, but for every video he does 2 videos. He does one that's basically just the how-to, and he just you watch him doing something. And then he does a second video using much of the same footage where he explains the theory and the whys and the hows and stuff like that. And he puts them on 2 different YouTube channels. So you can go to his channel and just watch him build stuff, or you can go to his other channel and get the full technical explanation.
Is that what you're talking about, Moretti?
Yeah, we have talked about that too. I don't think that's going to eliminate the number of questions, because you have to think about, for the people who are asking, there's literally no cost for them asking a question, but there's a lot of cost for you answering them because it's going to take your time. So of course, when my student asks my question, I'm sort of obligated to answer their question because they're in my class. I don't think you should feel the same obligations to all the people who watch your videos, because and again, there's no cost for, you could say things very clearly in the video and still people could ask that very question in the comment field. You can't help that. There's no cost for people and
Yeah.
typing in questions.
Well,
So
it's the extra work involved, which is why I kind of hesitated mentioning that, because it is a tremendous amount of extra work to do 2 videos. I mean, you're already doing 2 videos for Patreon and non-Patreon people. So
Well, one option would be to actually draw that distinction at that divide already. I'm already doing 2 videos. I could make the Patreon video the one that also has the explanatory theoretic stuff. So if that way, if you don't want to watch all that, you can go watch the YouTube version.
yeah, that's a great solution.
How does that sound, Moretti, to addressing your concern?
Yeah, that sounds good. So either is good, having the short YouTube video and the more comprehensive Patreon video, or having a YouTube video and have a Patreon Q&A session that you can record and then also make available on Patreon.
We can mix it up. We can do both. I mean, or we can do both. I can make the more comprehensive video and then we can also have the discussion later on. The discussion is, to me, one of the most valuable things this whole thing has brought about, because these sessions are really good. That one with Andy was just the best.
Discord's also a great place to ask those
Yep.
extra questions, because you get answers from everybody.
Yes, exactly. That really has become a very vibrant community. Let me ask one thing, back to Mike's suggestion concerning indexing the contents of the video. There's an issue with that that maybe needs to be addressed. When I go back and look at some of these old videos, my impulse is that they need to be pulled, that they need to be taken down. They're not well done, they're not helpful, the quality's terrible, and I definitely don't want to index those and leave them on the site. I'm okay leaving them on the site if people really want to go look for them, but I'm a bit concerned about that now. And indexing the videos doesn't sound like a lot of work, but that's a tremendous amount of work.
But you're already saying you have a lot of old material that you would never use in an index. So what if you started from scratch and said, I'm going to now index some of the better videos, and you just, as you have time or you have someone else do it, they're like, okay, this was the one where he compared the Mitutoyo with the Raynox to the Thorlabs, right? First entry in the index, and you just keep building it as you go along. It just makes it, it's like, show me the money, land the plane, cliff notes, get me to that part of the video.
I see this point, and there is one other thing, and then I'll shut up, and that is, if I do that, why would anybody ever want to buy my course?
Well, the course is going to be more follow along, right? So they can try it themselves.
It's linear. It's a linear tour through.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be making all my work linear if I make it transparently searchable.
They would have source files, right? So they can actually do the same thing. You will make it like a follow along thing, like you show them what to click on and they will do it themselves. I think that's major difference between your YouTube video where you're doing things, but they would have to recreate it on their own, versus the courses, you telling them how to recreate it, because you're going to have source files. They can do the same thing that you're doing.
Yeah, but for some parts of it, yeah.
But in terms of indexing, I have one idea for that, which I've seen some other lady who does dog training course subscription. But what she does, long story short, what she does, she releases things as a stream. So she will package like 3 or 4 or 5 videos together as a topic stream. And it's like, well, if you want to review how to do this and this and this, these are the 3 videos that I recommend that it touches on that topic, and you can watch those again.
That's my playlist, so. Yeah,
it's you could possibly use it as a playlist. Yeah, I think having too many, I mean, some of the enduring thing could be in a playlist, but here a playlist, it could be either a folder where you just put all the videos that has something in common in the same folder. That's like a loose playlist. A structured playlist would be have to videos, video 1, video 2, video 3, and you have to watch them in those sequence. You see what
Yeah,
I'm saying? It's
I see
much
what you're
more of a
saying.
structured. So that's what could be a way to repackage the videos, that so that now you don't have to go through all the videos. You can pick out which one you want to of the all videos you want to highlight, and then repackage them into structured playlists.
I think if you had to take whatever hours in the day and allocate what would be the most valuable thing to you personally for your channel, is to get these courses done.
Yeah.
Get them done and market them through F-stoppers or the places like that that market the courses, because that has the potential to reach a huge audience. And the material is, everyone wants that material. And then within the Patreon group, then it's more of an organic thing, you know, and we work as a different audience. But
I'd also suggest that if you're considering removing some of your old videos, you could base the criteria more on the information as opposed to the production quality. And then what I mean by that is if you've got videos out there where the information is wrong or it's been updated, then yeah, certainly remove those videos.
Oh no, yeah.
But
I
if
would
it's simply because you don't
replace
like the
any.
But if it was simply because, you know, the information is good, but you didn't like the production quality, leave it there, because we can look beyond the production quality.
Well,
The sound is a little off or the lighting's a little off. Who cares?
some of them are so bad, but I would replace them. I didn't mean to say take them down and leave a gap. No, I would re-edit. I would reshoot any of those terrible videos.
Okay.
I put them up for a reason. I mean, they cover all the topics that I wanted to cover, so that I would replace them. But yeah, I wonder when I could possibly get that course done. It's just such a labor-intensive process.
Well, that you should, like we said, you should focus on that and not on indexing old videos. And
Yeah.
certainly, if the people want the videos indexed, you know, volunteers could go back and index the videos and you know, just put a comment with the times, and it could be pinned to the top so that it's the first comment. You see that on a lot of music videos. So.
Yes, that's a good point. In fact,
crowdsource it.
Crowdsource it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it would be something that would benefit you guys. But again, let me ponder that. And I feel like there are a couple of other issues related to that, but I have no problem with indexing the videos and making it easier to find my stuff. I did make my website searchable, which is one way to get really pretty quickly to whatever it is you're looking for. That's a very powerful engine in Squarespace. So if you ever needed to find pretty much anything, just go to my homepage and type it in, and that will show you the videos.
Another thing that I'd like to request, and hopefully this shouldn't be too much work, but when you're posting on Patreon the replay of the live streams,
yeah,
if you could attach or put a link to the chat recording,
okay,
that would
yeah,
be
chat
super
transcript.
handy, because that chat transcript, because you know, a lot of times
Yes.
people are putting links and stuff in that, and if you're not able to attend the live view and you watching it later, you're kind of missing out on that.
Very good point. Yeah, I have made that note before. I will do that today and from now on. You have three things that when you record one of these meetings, it records the audio, the visual, then it records an audio file, just the spoken word, and then the chat. So would you want me to put the audible file up as well? Is that something you could ever see yourself using?
It's not important for myself, maybe for others who may be listening in the car or something like that. But you know, you can always just listen to the audio track on the video too. You don't actually have to watch the video.
True.
But the chat transcript is hugely valuable.
Okay, I will make sure that is in there from now on, starting today. actually starting tomorrow, because it is sunny and breezy and cool here today, and I'm out of insects, so I'm going to go on a slaughter rampage this afternoon, and I'll do this video tomorrow.
We
So you're
have
gonna bug out on it,
about
huh?
we have
I'm
about
gonna bug
100
out.
seals and sea lions in our bay right now that are mating and chowing down on herrings and stuff. So after this, that's what I'm going to be doing.
Yeah, I'd rather do that than go bug hunting. Chowing down and mating,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, but you don't look like a sea lion.
no. All right, what else? That's a lot of good suggestions. Does anybody personally know Don? If you do, let me know. You can make an introduction. What else, guys?
Anything going on with Jeff at Light Glass Optics? Any inventory we should know about besides what we talked about last time?
Good question. Yeah, Jeff did get in touch with me about his inventory of microscopes. He has a bunch of new reconditioned MZ6s, MKZ6s. The one I have. Great microscope. He's got a bunch of them he told me about, but also he's got these rollable, foldable, soft LED panel sheets, which I actually just recommended to a macro photographer in Colorado who had a very specific problem that he needed lighting for. And it struck me that this might just be the thing to do. It's formable, and it is basically a wall of light that you can move around. And Jeff has a whole bunch of them in different sizes. And I need him to send me one so I can try it out, but it sounds really promising for weird special effects. What else did he have?
No other objectives though.
Not the ones you want. He's got some 2Xs and a couple of 1Xs, which I would love to have that 1X, but yeah, none of he doesn't have any 10s or 5s. We sold all his 5s.
He has 120, doesn't he, or 220s?
Hmm?
He has 1 or 220s, doesn't he?
He does. They're the old 20s like mine. That's it. I don't recall. He has a 7.5, which is another one I'd love to have. But yeah, it's his inventory on. Oh, that's what I was going to say. There's a brand of motion equipment that he has. It's not the Edmunds. It's not that fancy. It's the next grade down. The Opto Sigma is the brand. I wasn't familiar with it, but he's got some really nice stuff. Goniometers and translation tables, if you're into that kind of thing, as I am. That's about it. Thanks for asking. If you go by his site and look, you'll see all kinds of weird stuff. I don't know what half of it is. Light Glass Optics. I should put the URL in the chat room.
Alan, speaking of translation tables,
yeah,
the one you use, is that an Amazon cheapie from China?
Yeah, it's not cheap, but it is from China, and I've said so much bad stuff about it. For what it is, which is a chunk of metal that holds your specimen still while you photograph it, it does an okay job. It is not a precision instrument. The micrometers are not micrometers. They're just screws that look like micrometers. It's not a precision tool. This is a precision tool. This translation table will move a micron not now as I've just held it up like that, but you know, what you need to consider is, do you need absolute precision, as in measuring distances, or do you need something that makes fine incremental movement? If you want fine incremental movement, that cheap thing, which was actually close to $300 from China, will do that. But you know, if you ever needed to actually have indexing or measuring, if you were using it, for example, to test lenses or whatever, you'd want something better. That's the best way. I was put off that from the day I got it, because it arrived before Christmas and the postman threw it down the driveway to the last 50 feet to my house, and it hit the front door and snapped off the R part of the XYZ R bit, the microtome at the top. So, and they wouldn't take it back, the shop. So yeah, had a bad taste in my mouth, but it's fine for what it does.
Okay. Speaking of taking it back, is there any progress on the Godox?
No, I have now spoken to Glimmer is the name of the company that I got it from, and they're a retailer through Amazon in the US, and Godox. Godox is very nice and friendly. They say that they will do whatever they have to do to make sure that the warranty is properly discharged, and Glimmer just says send it to China, and they've said that twice now. So I have a feeling this is where people go to rot, in the Godox repair experience, in between Godox and the seller. And what's your recourse? None whatsoever. I asked Amazon and they said, no, it's a completed sale. Did you get what you asked for? And they don't enforce warranties.
This is why I don't buy lenses or any kind of expensive equipment from Amazon or online retailers. I always go to a local dealer.
Yeah, I would too. This was just I've pretty much stopped using that shop, but this was a mistake, and I really wanted them right then, because I'd been promising the videos for so long. But yeah, this is what you get.
I spent a lot of years in the service business, and I've come to discover that paying a few extra bucks to ensure decent service is worth it in the long run. You know, saving 5% to go to a budget retailer or an online retailer isn't always worth the effort.
No, it's not. And I'll tell you though, I'm one of the very few people probably in this chat room who can drive 1 hour or 45 minutes in one direction, an hour in the other, to hit brick and mortar camera shops, one in Pensacola and one in Mobile. That's very unusual. Most people don't have one in their state anymore.
It would be interesting to see how B&H or Adorama handled the same problem.
They would already have replaced it. They wouldn't have asked. They would have just replaced it as soon as I contacted them. And I knew that getting into it. I don't know why I was just so, well, I wanted it in a hurry is what it was.
We have a different selection of online photography dealers in Canada, you know, like Henry's and Goslin and McBain's and stuff like that. And I've dealt with all of them, and they've all been great. The service has been good. The aftermarket service has been great, but not so much with Amazon or AliExpress.
No, the Chinese ones, which used to be okay. I was a convert to Ali a long time ago, because their prices were just unbelievable. Now their prices are not unbelievable, and their service is terrible, and you often just don't get what you ordered. So,
admittedly, I've bought Benro from AliExpress because their prices are way lower. But I'm hoping that the stuff never breaks.
Yeah, I don't do that much business with them, but it's probably about time I reconsidered being an affiliate for them, to be honest.
It's the 6 to 8 week delivery time that drives me crazy.
6 to 8 weeks delivery from Amazon?
No, from China, AliExpress.
Oh, from China, yeah. Didn't used to be. All right. guys, it's 4 o'clock, so we're gonna wrap it. Loads of good suggestions. I will in my next report, which will be sometime this week, I'll give feedback on which of these I'll be able to do right away and what my plan is. The calendar that I've been promising, Moretti and I talked about it a couple of days ago, and as soon as we arrive at the mechanics of it, the calendar with the cover page, which will be the winner of the last photo competition, will adorn the front of that. So that'll be a great place for you to go to find out what we're doing, when, what videos are coming out, that type of thing. And it'll be hosted over on Discord. Though if anything important happens, I'll copy a page of it over onto Patreon. Are you getting too many, too few, or just about okay on the Patreon posts?
I'm happy with what we're getting.
Happy?
Yeah, I'm kind of concerned about how much you're doing. You know, you're just working yourself to death, it seems like, everything coming out.
Well, yes. Yep, that's what I do. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, is that that's not a request, is it?
I think you should pace yourself.
Yeah, but I am. I mean, I've been pacing myself at this pace since I was born, really. I'm not sure I'd be any good at doing it any slower. What would you do in the rest of the time?
Go take pictures.
Oh, I do that anyway.
I mean, go outside and take some pictures. Get some fresh air.
You're
people go outside. Why do they do that?
you're not spending so much time answering your emails or the comments on your videos. I couldn't believe it when I a few months ago started watching your channel, that there was that explanation under the YouTube videos. I mean, I've even copied the material off and saved a hard copy of it to go back and learn from it. I mean, that's one reason I joined your Patreon group, and I thought, well, this is great. I'm going back and copying all this information off, but that isn't going to work. And then I saw you started talking about going the Patreon route and realizing you were reorganizing things, which is what I would have pretty soon suggested. But anyway, there's a lot of information in your answers to the comments or questions on your YouTube channel. So
there is years of stuff there, and I'm very glad I wrote it, and I'm very glad that people like you read it and follow me because of that. It bothers me that I'm unable to do that like I used to, but it is just impractical. What bothers me the most is that I have my inbox. It has over 2,000 emails in it that I haven't had a chance to even scan to look for important emails. It's become too much of a burden to get to. So that's the one thing, Bill, that still, is an issue for me to struggle with, is I don't mind working. I don't mind working day and night to make interesting content. I do not like this email monster that I created. So
I think you need different email addresses. You definitely need one that only where serious business requests can get in and get to you, and then another one for all your social media related, but anyone,
I agree.
So it's important. I mean, you don't want to miss important business opportunities, anything like that. So you would need to have some separate email addresses.
Yeah, I have about 6, and the problem is, I'll tell you what it is I will get an email from you to my regular email. I'll answer it, but because of the last email I sent, it'll sign it with another email address, and I won't notice it, and I'll send it out. and now you have 2. Eventually, before long, everybody in the universe has all of my email addresses, and they just, you're right, I need to
That
change
must
my
be
email
something
address.
in your email setup that could be fixed, I think.
Yeah, if it's a
But yeah.
computer thing, I probably screwed it up irrevocably. All right, well, I will try not to work too hard, but yeah, today I'm going to have to do something with that email. I'll get a new email address. Do you want it? Do I give it to you?
Me?
Alan, can I make
Question.
a,
Of course, I'll give it to you. Bruce, you get it.
can I
as
make a,
well.
can I make a suggestion about your emails, Alan?
You can.
I love getting your emails back on my frivolous questions, but you go to a lot of work and you make them exceptionally long, which I appreciate, but boy, you waste a lot of time answering my question.
Have you ever got an email answer from Rick Littlefield? That man writes a long email response, and I love it. So I hear what you're saying, Bruce. I just when you and I talk, you're sending me pictures, we're comparing notes, you're asking questions, and I don't feel right sending you back a response that only hits half the points. It's rude.
Okay, that's fair enough. Might I tell you that probably doesn't interest you, but the sun is almost up here now.
The last time you and I shared one of these things, it was midnight, or it was 2 o'clock in the morning here, and Sunday afternoon there. So it's payback. love the what's that thing called? Air. What do you call that? That goes.
That is a dress now. I'll be going back to bed short.
Well, thanks for getting up for us. We appreciate it. And I will take your recommendation under consideration. All right, guys, we'll call it a day.
Alan, are you going to stop the recording, or did you want me to
do it? It will automatically stop when I press end meeting for all.
Okay, so I don't have to do anything to stop my backup copy?
It will automatically download to you when it downloads to me. It'll take about 45 minutes usually on a Saturday.
All right. I'll let you know if I got something that I have something.
Guys, thank you so much for today. Great feedback, great input. It was great questions too. So it was a good session. Time well spent. Thank you so much. And I'll see you in a video in a couple of days.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, Alan.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much, Alan.
Take care.